One, there's a shortage of engineers in Mississippi, in that the number of engineers that are coming out of our schools to be licensed. As you're aware, Dr. Truax, being a board member, you know that the predominance of our licensees are actually out of state.
Welcome to the 21st Century Engineer podcast. As those of you that have been watching and following along with the other podcasts, you know that what we're trying to do is have a conversation with individuals that have perspective on what it means to be a professional engineer or simply just a professional in the 21st century. And the individuals that we're talking about have a depth and breadth in a lot of different areas. And as a result, today's guest is an well, many of my former students have been drug into this podcast environment over the past few occasions. Monica Gilmore is no exception. Monica is a former student of mine. Currently, she serves, however, as the executive director of the Mississippi Board of Licensure for professional engineers and surveyors. And in as much as I also serve on the board, I kind of twisted her arm to have a conversation with us today with the idea of the importance and role of being a professional engineer. Monica, welcome to the 21st Century Engineer podcast. I hope you have a
Thank
great
you.
time.
Thank you, Dr. Truax. I appreciate the opportunity. And let me give you your flowers while I'm here online. I've been watching you in the other podcasts, and I've shared with you how impressed I am with, one, how engaging you are with all of the guests that you have on the podcast, but also just the information that they share. I have found them very informative and have enjoyed watching them.
Oh, well, very good. Thank you very much. That's kind of the goal, and I will add you to the group of podcasts. Hopefully, by the time we're finished today. Um,
Hopefully.
yeah, hopefully that's of course our combined goal here. I've already mentioned that you went to Mississippi State when I was on the faculty there and got your civil engineering degree. You've also worked in the profession. Could you give us a little kind of an overview of the various positions you've had, the diversity of roles you've played since graduating?
Hmm. That's going to require for me to think for just a moment. I have a 20 plus year career in the engineering profession, if you will, in that I worked for a number of companies, among them Woodward Clyde Consultants, which no longer exist, um, Terracon, which I believe is still in business.
Yep.
And I also interned while I was at Mississippi State with the Federal Department of Transportation. So, in that, I had a multitude of different roles, but I would have to say that predominantly I did a lot of phase one environmental site assessment work, which essentially is a prerequisite, if you will, for loans on mostly commercial properties. Companies go to banks seeking financing. The bank says, okay, I need to know more about your property. I need a phase one. And I was primarily responsible for completing those for most of the companies that I worked with. That's the short answer.
Well, we didn't need to live the whole 20 years, but then again, I've probably forgotten 20 years, so that's
Mhm,
okay too. Uh, yeah, I mean, cumulatively, there's a 20-year
mhm,
block that I don't recall. At least I'm not going to admit it. Uh,
mhm.
I'm holding myself to that. One of the things that I can say led to your selection to be executive director, and I acknowledge that you actually started working on the board prior to your selection of executive director. So it wasn't as if the board members didn't know who you were, what you were capable of. But what was impressive to the board members as a whole, and remains impressive today, is your passion about professional engineering and the issues of being a professional. And we both acknowledge that in large part one can be a professional without having a license, but at the same time that issue of obtaining a license and establishing that mark. Could you talk a little bit about why you've developed this passion, why you feel so that getting a PE is just so important?
Well, one, because I like my job. I very much like what I do. I like. Not to say that because I have a board member interviewing me, but I like my job. I liked it before when I was doing PR for the agency. I wish that someone had said to me, and that I had heard them when they said it when I was coming up, that getting your license is very important, and that it will serve you in the longevity of your career. And I wish that I had heard that if someone had said it to me. It was not put to me that way. And in that, I now see that one, there's a shortage of engineers in Mississippi, in that the number of engineers that are coming out of our schools to be licensed. As you're aware, Dr. Truax, being a board member, you know that the predominance of our licensees are actually out of state. Personally, that's a great thing in terms of the fees that we get for the agency, but in terms of the number of engineers who are living and operating in Mississippi, not so much so. And so, for that reason, that's also very important to me to talk about the importance of becoming licensed.
Well, the
I also
license.
feel,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
sorry. Go ahead, please.
I was going to say, I also feel that our young people need to know more about the process. I think that to a certain degree, perhaps part of why not as many are going into it is because they don't understand the steps to it. And so the only way for us to overcome that is to talk about it.
I couldn't agree more, and for that reason, I'm going to move you in a kind of a slightly different path because you took on an initiative a couple years ago at the board. Um, you were preeminent in that move, preeminent in the sense that most other boards weren't working in this direction. Uh, you work closely with the National Council of Examiners for Engineers and Surveyors, or what most of us call NCWS, the people that make out the exams, the FE, the PE, and for that matter, the FS and the PS exams, and that preeminence, that forward moving, forward looking thought was about the fact that because we don't have enough engineers doing the jobs that need to be done that are so critical in protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the public, that you took the board forward in doing outreach. And I want to talk a little bit about, or have you actually talk a little bit about that outreach program, why you thought it was important, how you're going about implementing it.
Well, I think you're talking about our spotlight features. And one of the reasons why it was important to me is that I felt that people need to see themselves as being an engineer. And one of the ways to see yourself is to see people who look like you.
Mhm.
I also wanted to celebrate those people who had chosen to pursue licensure and to have them talk about why it was important to them. Again, serving as an inspiration for the young people coming up. It's been very successful, if I must say so myself. And we've seen other agencies do similar, where they're celebrating the people who work within their agencies, and to a certain degree, and in large part, some of the engineers that we've also recognized.
Super. Well, the program that you've manifest for us has multiple points for the reasons you just said. There's multiple points of entry. There's multiple points of impact,
Hmm.
and so you've talked a little bit about, or excuse me, you've actually worked towards engaging high school students and shining a light on what it means to be an engineer, what it means to be a professional, what it means to be impactful through the engineering profession to these individuals who might be looking at other careers or maybe not even thinking about the career at all, and you're doing it quite effectively. Uh, what, how, or why are you? I guess really, how are you going about having this program move forward? What do you hope to gain through your efforts, or how are you attacking this issue?
Can I answer that question in twofold?
Of course.
The first being how I came to be involved in engineering as a student myself. And that is, I had a math teacher to tell me, and a school counselor to say to me, Monica, you're good in math and science. You should consider going into engineering. And that was without them or me knowing what all that would entail. But that was my introduction into, okay, well, I guess you're right. I'm good at math and science, so I'll pursue engineering.
I need
Um,
to send them a thank you letter. Let me know who it is someday, and I do it. Where I went to high school, in fact, literally the people I worked with at my dad's service station growing up as a kid, and the high school where I went, I told people I wanted to go be an engineer, and they had no concept of what it was, or they thought it meant drive a train.
Okay. Yeah.
So at
And
least
I
somebody
get
knew
that.
more
Yes.
where you were going to school than where I went to school. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, even with that, I don't think, and I know for me personally, I didn't really understand what all that entailed at that time. And I'm not sure that school counselors now understand what all that entails. It's great to be good in math and science, but I think too that it would help on the high school level if students are also told, okay, well, yes, you're great in math and science, and those are going to be very important things in terms of your schooling, but I want you to be aware of in total what all this process will involve. There are two exams you have to take that you have to pass in order to become licensed as an engineer. There's experience that you have to get under a licensed engineer. All of those things can play into one preparing students for the reality of what it does mean. But we also need to talk about um, the contributions that engineers make, engineers and surveyors, engineers make to our community, the things that their hands are in that no one really thinks about. You know, you're driving down the road, an engineer played a part in that. You're driving across a bridge, an engineer played a part in that. You're in a building, that building is not collapsing on you or around you, an engineer played a part in that. So, part of what I was hoping to do with the spotlight feature was one, to tell the ground root story of what led those individuals to licensure. And it could be in large part because of their family or the students who chose to go to a community college first before going to a 4 year program, just to highlight that not everybody has the same journey, but we can all get there. Does that kind
That's
of answer
well,
your question?
yeah, that's well put. We don't all have the same journey. We don't arrive at the same path or same point, I should say, by the same path. We have our own life experiences, our own backgrounds, our own opportunities, our own choices. But when we're making those choices, thinking about the future, not just the present, is part of that challenge. It's the same
Yes.
thing with the profession, as you know. When we do the things we do as engineers, we have to think about what the long term ramifications are because we are impactful. We do
Hmm.
impact lives. We do things that really change lives. I had somebody a long time ago. Actually, it was somebody from US EPA was riding over to a facility that I was working with tangentially. I was supporting the board of supervisors in the county here in the state, and the individual was making some comment that from EPA was making some comment about uh, the issue, and I'm not going to get into too many details because there's litigation involved. But what an individual said was, "Hey, on your trip home, count the number of bridges you drive over, and every time you drive across a bridge, thank an engineer." I mean,
Exactly.
you just don't even think about it. And he wasn't even counting culverts, which
Hmm.
are also there. So, yeah,
Yes.
we tend to take what we do. Well, engineers historically have always done what they did and hid it under a basket, and
Yeah.
therefore
In
people.
silence.
Yes,
Hmm.
exactly.
Hmm.
Because we were told if we did anything more than that, we were being braggadocious, which was
Hmm.
totally wrong. But it's why we are where we're now. We're having to brag a little bit about what we do. Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in order for us to increase the number of students who, or the number of individuals who are going into engineering, that's what we're going to have to do. We have to talk about, what led us there and why it brings us joy to do the work that we do.
Right. Right. Well, you mentioned that getting the license facilitates you doing this work, and in large part that's true. Certainly, there's a number of individuals who work in what I call civil infrastructure who don't have engineering licenses. Uh, Contractors, technicians, technologists, construction workers, municipal officials, and there's a wide opportunity, wide gambit of people that have impact on civil infrastructure. But for one to move towards engineering and move into engineering where they can take on a leadership role, whether it be in terms of an entrepreneur having their own consulting firm, or whether they be somebody that works within a consulting firm or a state agency or within industry, to have the authority to approve, sign, and seal, submit documentation on behalf of that organization or to that organization, whichever the case. The PE is part of that. Could you, for those who aren't familiar with the process, and I know you're eminently familiar with it because of the position you hold, kind of outline what the steps are to getting a professional engineering license?
So we'll call them as NCWS does, the three E's of licensure. The first E being education. You have to have an engineering degree from an ABET accredited program. Now, where there are some nuances around your degree, it must either meet the NCWS engineering standard or be from an ABET accredited program. So that's the first E. The second E is exam. As I mentioned earlier, you have to take and pass two exams. The first being the Fundamentals of Engineering exam, which is encouraged for you to take during your senior year of high school. And I would strongly encourage students to take it during their senior year because once you graduate and you're in the world working or whatever, you lose some of the knowledge that you gained in college that is key to the Fundamentals of Engineering exam. So that's the first exam. And then you have to take the Principles and Practices of Engineering exam or the PE exam. And there are several different disciplines that you can take or as your focused exam, but you have to pass both exams. And then here in Mississippi, you have to have 48 months of qualifying experience under a licensed PE. Um, and I guess the key word for us here in Mississippi is supervisory experience under a licensed PE. That person must indicate that they are your supervisor. Working with someone who is a PE, but they're not giving you any guidance or didn't serve as your supervisor does not qualify. So
Exactly.
the three E's to licensure: education, exam, and experience.
Right. And we don't want to belittle or in any way skirt the experience piece on this.
Mm-hmm.
The original model that we're currently operating under for licensure in the United States, in the broad strokes, was 4 years of academic training followed by 4 years of apprenticeship or mentoring. Now that model goes back 120 years, give or take, and so that years of experience is important. It's important for people coming out of college if they want to become an engineer, a professional engineer, to pick an employer who's going to provide that mentoring, that tutorage, that's going
Mm-hmm.
to tutorage, pick a word,
Tutelage.
and
Mm-hmm.
and 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 we'll make one up if we need to, Monica.
Mm-hmm.
When in doubt, create new. But the idea here is that supervised learning is about filling the gaps that they didn't get, enhancing communication, enhancing management
Exactly.
skills, enhancing finance, monetary management, time management, personnel management, resource management.
Mm-hmm.
It's all of that, and while it gets touched on in many academic programs, it isn't fully prepared. American Society of Civil Engineers does a body of knowledge, and they don't. The way it's constructed, the rubric is constructed. You spend those next 4 years developing. NCWS is developing the skill set. NCWS is talking about codifying and looking at defining what those next 4 years are supposed to be, getting
Mm-hmm.
those skills, getting that additional education. Maybe it's technical, maybe it's professional, maybe it's ethical, maybe it's a combination thereof,
Mm-hmm.
and all that plays very well together. Of course, as you're saying, and as we both know, without the engineering license, there's certain things you're restricted from doing, as I've already suggested. You can't stamp and seal and take responsibility for designs, nor can you take ownership of designs. That comes both with reward and penalty, responsibility, if you rather. So that whole process of becoming a professional is important, and it's important also to the state, to the citizens of the state, to know that with that license, you've demonstrated a minimum competency, and that you're trusted or can be trusted to do a task, do the job that you're assigned to do. So,
Mm-hmm. That is correct.
yep,
Well,
it's what it is. Now, in Mississippi, we don't license by discipline. In fact, the vast majority of states and jurisdictions in the U.S. don't license by jurisdiction. Excuse me, by specialty. So we don't license civil engineers or industrial engineers or mechanical engineers or any of the other 23 to 43 different varieties and flavors. It feels like a Baskin Robbins event. But any opinion on that? I'm just curious, coming out of complete left field for you, because I didn't prep you on that, folks.
can I
Like I
can
didn't
I
prep
go
you on
back?
any of this.
Can I go back to the last thing you said, and then I'll come back to that one?
Sure.
And that is in that you kind of have to think of engineers in the same way that we do doctors. A student who
Good.
goes to medical school can graduate from medical school and call himself a doctor, but he can't actually practice medicine until he's licensed. Similarly, you can go to school for engineering and learn, math and science and so forth and so on. But until you're licensed, you can't call yourself an engineer. And also, if you think about the fact that Mississippi has not really had a major infrastructure fail that was caused by design issues, or at least that I can think of, there may have been some. Um, I don't know that you necessarily fully understand the importance of what an engineer's role is in design and construction of the things that we live and work in, the roads, the bridges, the buildings. Whereas in some other states, take for example Florida, and I can't remember the bridge that failed near a college or on a college campus. But when you
Yeah.
hear of something like that, it drives home. Okay, people start to, or the bridge that the ship hit in, was it Baltimore last year? Everyone starts to look at, well, what caused it or made it happen. And they start to get down to the very basics of it. Well, who did the design? And then that's where the engineers, the importance of what engineers do comes into play. And you want to make sure then that the people who are doing that type of work are qualified to do it. And that's one of the things that, or one of the roles of this agency, is to ensure that those persons who are licensed meet the applicable qualifications.
I had not really given it the thought, but you've caused me to do, at least in the time that you were speaking, to give it some thought. So I was listening, but I was also thinking, as I oftentimes do. And you're correct. The greatest failure that I can think of in the state was the failure of Oktibbeha County Dam
Mm-hmm.
here near where I live. Maybe that's part of the reason I even know it happened. But a large recreational lake had a dam failure.
Mm,
And I know it because I got pulled in on it. The county engineer is a friend, a former student, and very competent individual. But we worked together for 3, 4, 5 solid days trying to think how to keep this structure from failing. Now, the good news is engineers didn't design that dam.
mm, mm,
That was a soil conservation service dam that went back about 70 years that hadn't been
mm-hmm,
maintained properly. But it was still a civil infrastructure failure as such.
mm-hmm.
And it does drive home the importance of having engineers do the design. In fact, the biggest problem has been getting the dam rebuilt because all the engineers come in, look at it, and go, well, first off, we have to tear it completely down because it was built
Yep.
wrong. Secondly, we got to build it back right if we're building it back right. And
Yeah.
that's not a cheap proposition today.
Process. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the good and the bad thing, I guess, about engineers is that, we want to know how to do it right. And so, and to a certain degree, engineers are not afraid of failure, in that they're going to look at why things failed to make them better, to prevent that failure from occurring moving forward.
Yeah, correct. And what I, of course, champion for civil infrastructure is, unlike many of the other engineering disciplines. In fact, I was talking with somebody today that has a manufacturing facility who's looking for machinists, and their engineering operation is all about making the same part several times with a high level of quality. Civil engineers rarely make the same project or product twice. Uh,
Hmm.
every mile of road, every building built, every bridge
It's
placed
different. Yep.
has uniqueness associated with it. In fact,
Exactly.
I mean, nice try, a former student and current friend of mine runs a construction company that builds Dollar General stores.
Hmm.
And David Machado often said that those every one of these buildings is different. The goal is to make them look like cookie cutters,
Hmm.
and not one of them is. So
Yeah.
another way to apply.
Multiple things come into factor. Now, what was the original question?
Well, the original question was about the idea of being specialty, and you kind of hit it when you talked about doctors. Taking it to the next level, the idea would be that, well, you get your medical degree and you become a doctor and you can practice as a general physician, a general practitioner. But if you wanted a heart surgeon or if you wanted a brain surgeon, uh, then you're going to have to do a little more homework about who it
Yeah,
is.
that becomes a specialization. You're looking for a specialist in that area.
That's right.
And to the certain degree, while Mississippi is a non-discipline specific state in that all our engineers are called professional engineers, engineers do practice in their area of expertise, if you will, for lack of a better word. So, ethically, Mississippi looks at an engineer to practice in the areas that he knows, not so. For example, civil. If that's your area, that would be what your focus should be, not structural or bridge design, because that's not what you're doing,
Right. Right.
or
And then,
electrical.
right. Exactly. The
Mhm.
other advantage, of course, then is it is about your profession, your career, your livelihood. And I'm speaking to the individual listening and watching us today. And in that regard, it's really about a matter of taking ownership. Uh,
Mhm.
you got your education. You passed the test. You completed the examinations and the experience. The idea of getting the PE means that you're not constrained to one employer or one environment to work, because it's up to you to work under that license and make sure you're competent in those services that you offer and provide.
Mhm.
So, okay, I'm going to twist
Yes.
the tables on you at this point, and I want to talk a little bit about your work experience. And this is not a job 3 month evaluation or 1 year evaluation or anything else, but you're not working in the capacity of a technical capacity of an engineer. You're really working more in the professional capacity, and that capacity is managing a state agency. Uh,
Mhm.
I liken it to a consulting firm in many ways, because many things you do, the accountabilities, keeping records, making sure things are done with accuracy, timeliness are all part of the job responsibility. Could you kind of overview what it is to you to be the executive director, what your challenges and charges are as far as being the executive director of the Board of Licensure for a state?
Yes. Well, one, I serve in
And
the
you're not
board.
in jeopardy with your response.
Okay. Well, I work on behalf of the board. I am the board's employee. All of the other employees who work for the agency are my employees. And we are all charged with maintaining the agency or managing the agency on behalf of the board. And that includes processing applications, responding to licensee concerns and issues, um, doing renewals, everything that goes into the licensure processes, if you will. And obviously, as the executive director, I'm also charged with managing the office, which entails managing personnel and everything that goes along with that, the bills that come in, issues with our building, issues with employees, issues with licensees or applicants. All of those things fall under my responsible charge as the employee of the board.
Well, and as an employee of an engineering firm, you're responsible for clients.
Mhm.
You'd be responsible for doing the same things as far as managing
Yes, it's very much the
clients.
business aspect of running a business. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
So the biggest heartache you have, I imagine, is that on like maybe a for-profit business or even an NGO, uh, you got to work for the state. You say you're an employee of the board, but in reality, you're still also an employee of the state.
Yes, the state agency. We're a state agency, but I like what I do. I like this job, and I guess one of the things that I could say is that it is never boring. I would add that you have to be able to pivot on a moment's notice, and respond to different things as they come, but be able to go back to whatever you dropped to address that emergency situation and keep it moving seamlessly. So there are a lot of challenges, but there's also a lot of joy. One of the things that we're doing recently is that we're trying to make improvements to our licensure system, as you are aware. And so when I get feedback from, say, for example, the we recently just made our PE initial application available online, where previously it was a paper and pencil process. And in that, we also asked PE initial licensees to start using an NCWS record when they submit their application. And so when I'm talking to initial applicants and explaining to them the benefit of the record as opposed to the old paper and pencil process that we were doing, it's cool to me to see the light go on in their head to say, you know what, you're right. I only have to do this once if I use the record. Whereas if I'm submitting it only to you, well, it's only to you. So Things like that bring me joy. And then when we make improvements to the system to make things more accessible, like being able to print your certificate, um, and seeing people do it and give us feedback that, hey, this was a seamless process. I really appreciate being able to do it. That makes me feel good about the job and the work that we're doing here on behalf of the board, on behalf of the state.
Great. Well, and you've only just brushed by the large volume of changes in the regulations, working
Yes.
on changing the statute,
It's
changes.
it's been a busy year and 4 months.
It has been, and there's been a
Yeah.
lot of changes, even redesigning the entire office operations. So
Hmm.
again, in terms of office management, and to be in effect equivalent to the manager of a consulting firm, you're
Exactly.
put in
For the
charge.
president or CEO of a, yes, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. So you've had all that
A
experience,
lot of responsibility.
but it wasn't insurmountable. And
Yes, that
your background, that diverse background that you were talking about earlier,
definitely played
all
a
plays
part in
into
it.
the outcomes.
It did, very much so. And I
Yeah,
appreciate that compliment that you were giving me in there that I kind of just passed over.
no problem. I give you compliments all the time that you pass over. Um, anyway, okay. Well, it's time for us to start wrapping things up. So I
Okay.
guess let me move to: is there anything that we haven't talked about that you'd like to share about the office, about the profession, uh, about what you've experienced to this point? Just you can't
Well,
talk about me.
I guess so. To the students who are in engineering programs in the state and who perhaps have taken the FE or the FS for that matter, and you weren't successful on that first try, I want to encourage you to keep going, to keep trying. It's 4 years of your life. Don't let one failure deter you. There are many people, and that's one of the things that I've come to know in this role is that there are many people who've taken that exam or the PE exam multiple times before they passed. So don't be discouraged. Stay the course and work to get your license because the one fact that is true is that once you have your license, it is yours. And the only person who could cause it to ever be taken away from you is you.
Yep. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. The only thing that I'll add as we wrap things up is that for those who are listening with us today, is that while we've been talking about the Mississippi Licensure Board, the perspectives and conversation that we've had really relates to licensure, regardless where you are.
In any state, that is
All the
correct.
jurisdictions, all the states
Hmm.
operate in much the same way. There's slight differences, and certainly if you're not in Mississippi, which the vast majority of people that are watching us right now aren't, that's okay. We won't hold that against you. No, seriously, the idea is that check with your board, check in early.
Hmm. Check with your state
Find
agency. Exactly.
exactly. They want to help. They
Hmm.
want to see you
They
succeed,
do.
probably as much or more than you want to see yourself succeed. So use
Yeah.
the resource and but everything we've talked about is a good framework and a good perspective as to what the importance of licensure is, how you go about doing it. And Monica, I truly appreciate you taking time today. I know you're busy. If for no other reason, we've already talked a couple times today about
Hmm.
stuff
Exactly. Some
you
other
expect
things.
me to do for you or for the board. And I'm working on it. We're going to get it done.
Okay. I saw one email, so I know that you are, and I
Well, I think
appreciate
I was
that.
almost finished, and I've got a
Hmm.
couple of calls to make. I'll get those done too. But in all seriousness, I do really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your perspectives with my listeners. And I know they've taken things away from this that will help them long term in their career and throughout their life. So
Well, thank you again, Dr. Truax, for the opportunity. I very much appreciate it.
thank you.
All right. Have a good day.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of the Infrastructure Network.